Welcome everyone
Hold
to
on.
oh,
And go.
all right. Hello everyone. Welcome to the live Q&A for the Fluent in 3 Months challenge. Benny and I are here to answer your questions about the challenge if you're a participant or if you're interested in joining. So go ahead and share your questions with us in the chat where you're watching this video. To get started, Benny, why don't you give us an introduction to exactly what the Fluent in 3 Months challenge is?
Okay. So effectively, I started the blog with my own personal 3 month challenges, and it was great, and people got a lot of inspiration from it. And what I really loved was that one of the viewers, Brian Kwong, who I've been lucky enough to meet in person a bunch of times, he wanted to start something inspired by my 3 month projects. So he created the Add One Challenge, and this was a community of people who would support one another and have 3 month challenges as a group, which of course was different to what I was doing with my own personal 3 month challenges. And over the years, he improved his system and it grew to a very strong community. And then when the day came, he decided to hand over the responsibility to the Fluent in 3 months team. So we've been developing the Add One Challenge for quite a while now, and then very, very recently we did a huge upgrade to it. We made a lot of improvements, and we took a lot of the feedback that people had about things that they felt that might have been missing from the Add One Challenge. So for instance, it's a great community, but they'd say they'd need a little bit more guidance, especially if it's their first language learning project. So with that in mind, the Fluent in 3 Months challenge is effectively a combination of a very supportive community and also a kind of a mini course in how to get started in speaking a foreign language over a 3 month period. And we have lots of people supporting you, like through the community itself, and then through Team Fluent in 3 Months, who are behind the scenes as well. We have specific challenges to make sure that your project is going in the right direction. We have selective teams that work within one another, whether it be for specific languages or teams that have less common languages that are all learning in parallel to one another. And we even have different versions of the challenge if you are learning in a higher level of the language. But for the most part, most people are starting off with the more beginner level or getting up to intermediate level as they're getting into the Fluent in 3 Months challenge. So it's one of the, I think it's one of the best results of my Fluent in 3 Months blog and my own personal challenges, because now we have hundreds of people every couple of months who all together are pushing their language learning level up a notch. And this is absolutely amazing. This is a great feeling, and we're really looking forward to kicking the next one off. So with that in mind, Shannon can add a couple of things to that if I missed anything, and you are more than welcome to ask any questions you like, and that's what we're talking about today. Anything about the Fluent in 3 Months challenge, and then if we've time at the end, we'll take one or two questions about general language learning, but I'll try to do a separate live stream if you have more general language learning questions. So today, anything, if you're considering the Fluent in 3 Months challenge, any questions or doubts that you might have, then Shannon and I are here to answer them.
We're starting to get questions in the chat, but before we dive into those, I want to pose one of the questions we get asked really often regarding the Fluent 3 Months challenge, and that's, do you provide resources for learning the language itself?
Yeah, so this is always a kind of the first thing that comes to mind when people imagine buying something that is guiding them in learning a language. They imagine that maybe it's got some kind of a built-in like grammar course or something. Like if they're learning Spanish, it's teaching them conjugations. And we wanted to go somewhere different with the Fluent in 3 Months challenge and previously the Add One challenge. That we essentially we guide you, and it is a course in the sense that it's teaching you how to be an independent language learner. So if we spoon fed you everything, if we literally just handed you every single aspect of the language that you had to learn, then that would be less work for you. But then at the end of the 3 months, you would be back to square one, because without coming constantly, and one of our business models is, even though we do get people repeating in the challenge, we are still we're very happy if somebody feels they're independently ready to go off by themselves. But people come back for the community aspect. But we really want to guide people. So we give suggested places to find the right resources, but we don't specifically say you must start with this exact course and then you must go on to this one, because everyone's different. We all have different priorities, we all have different goals, we all have different weaknesses, and I know that's definitely the case for me. So if I took on some kind of an in-depth course or a community that was guiding me, and they insisted I take some specific use specific resources, then it wouldn't be as good for me. So we do have a lot of things that we recommend, but we kind of see what you need more specifically, and we guide you in that process. What would you add to that, Shannon?
I think that that's really great. Like you said, we do help you find resources. We do provide some resources for certain languages. And because we understand that you're investing in the challenge, we always try to recommend free resources first. Um, but like Benny said, we want you to become successful independent language learners and to be able to recreate what you've done in the challenge on your own after the challenge is completed, and not need to rely on something to continue learning your language. So our focus is really on doing that. And you were saying that people come back for the challenge, the repeat challengers. And actually, the first question we have in the chat here is related to that. We have Corey, who says she's done 2 challenges, and she's done them with 2 different languages. So following that, can she do polyglot, or would she then need to do advanced and then polyglot? So just to kind of go over what these are, once you complete a Fluent in 3 months challenge, there are 2 other versions of the challenge that you can participate in after completing a challenge. So the reason that we ask that you complete the challenge before doing one of these other versions is because the challenge is a challenge. There is a bit of a learning curve. You need to learn a little bit of new technology. You're building your routines, and you're working on your motivation. You're working on the language itself. And so going through that program once is really important, so that you kind of understand the structure and you have a grasp of what the things are you need to do to really get your language to the next level. And so then once you complete a challenge, you qualify for advanced, which is the advanced version of the Fluent in 3 months challenge. So it's a little bit of a more intensive program. You really take your language to the next level. You create more videos. You're speaking more often. The challenges and assignments that you have are a little bit more advanced than the regular challenge. So that's advanced. The other one that she mentioned, polyglot, is when you work on more than one language during a challenge. This is not as intensive as advanced or as the Fluent in 3 months challenge. Instead, the focus of this particular challenge is building a long-term system to help you maintain multiple languages. So to answer Corey's question, there's really no, once you've completed a challenge for 2 languages, there's really no order as to what's correct to do next. It's really up to you. So you have the option of doing advanced and taking one of those languages and really accelerating it, really bringing it to the next level by getting all that extra speaking practice and those more challenging assignments. Or you can switch to polyglot and learn how to maintain those 2 languages that you've been learning with the Fluent in 3 months challenge for the long term. So that's really going to be up to you. You're welcome to send me an email and we can kind of chat it out and figure out what would be best for you going forward. I'm more than happy to help with that. So that would be the answer to that particular question. Benny, is there anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, so I think in terms of your long-term plans to become a polyglot, what I generally recommend is that you try to get each individual language up to a solid B2 level, where you could exist in social situations in that language. You're never going to reach perfection in the language. I'm still not perfect in English, so there's no end to the language learning process. But with that in mind, I would suggest that if you don't feel that you're at that very solid B2 level yet, then you might want to do an advanced challenge specifically, so that you can get at least one, if not both, of the languages over 2 different challenges to that level. And then when you're confident with them, then the polyglot version is going to help you a bit more, because otherwise the biggest thing that you have to work on is to get the level up. So you may as well just have a focus challenge on that. And generally that gets back to the question that of course we get asked quite a lot, is how do I learn multiple languages at once? And I always tell people you have to take it one at a time, build up each one to that level if you can, that B2 fluency level, and then from there it's easier to mix and match them. Okay?
Corey also left a really encouraging comment for those who are considering joining us for the challenge. She said, "This is more of a comment. If I would not have done this challenge, I would have given up. This is the best way to keep motivated, and they are wonderful at noticing when you need a little push." And I think by they, she means the Add One Challenge, or sorry, the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge coaches. Given that slip, I think that's a perfect opportunity to discuss what the difference between the Add One Challenge and the Fluent 3 Months Challenge is. Benny, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, I hinted at it before, but essentially the Add One Challenge was fantastic. It had solidified the concept of the community as being the core of what makes this work, and that is still true for the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge. So its next stage, we didn't take that away. We really wanted to keep that central to everything, because that is what everybody keeps coming back for. But again, there were still things missing, and we asked people, we took their feedback, and while a lot of people like learning with the community to support them, they do, for some people, they do need that extra little boost. And that's why I created a video series where I explained at each stage of the process of, like, you know, day 1, day 30, and so on, what I know from my own experience of having so many of these 3-month projects, and what we've learned from guiding so many people through the Add One Challenge, as it was called previously. What is the best thing for them to do at this stage, especially centered around the goals that we have within the program, because we ask that you work on making your own video in the language as kind of milestones to work towards. So the course is kind of better hand-holding in that sense of explaining how do you work around those milestones, and that's in addition to what we had previously. So that's why since it kind of integrates even more into what my 3-month projects were, it's why it made more sense to just integrate it with what is the whole philosophy behind the Fluent in 3 Months blog and the Fluent in 3 Months team.
Great. So it kind of got mentioned earlier as far as motivation and how the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge helped Corey maintain her motivation. What would you say is, as far as motivation goes, what the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge does to really help learners maintain their motivation or build motivation or even find motivation in learning their languages?
Yeah, very good question. And I think that when it comes to learning a language, something that we all struggle with, and I know in my first years of learning, especially when I would move to a country and not know anybody, or even have the idea by myself in my small town in Ireland, it felt very lonely because there wasn't anybody with me to be learning the language, and anyone else around me, it felt very foreign to them, and they wouldn't understand why I was learning the language. So, and I might have seen like something on the internet of someone impressive learning a language, or I might have read a book about something, or seen a depiction on TV of a polyglot and being like, oh man, they're so much smarter than me. I'm so dumb. I've been learning this for weeks or for months, and I can barely say anything. So the encouragement side is the fact that you are doing this as a team. There's a community of people, and you will see not only the positives of us giving you tips and what to do, and people patting you on the back and saying good job on your latest video upload, but we also share the struggles. And I really like this because it shows the realistic side of things that people share. Do you know what? I feel like I haven't made any progress in the last week. And we talk about that openly. And I think as people share these struggles, we see that we all go through them. And it's part of my process as well to share with people that I'm not just some genius who naturally picks up languages, but I make mistakes. I embarrass myself. I feel I feel like others are doing better than me, and these are just natural parts for everybody. So it's important that we share that because it can be very encouraging. It's very important to see that you are part of this community. There are other people going through these struggles, because otherwise it feels like you're the only person in the world learning a language, unless you are lucky enough to have those people around you already. But for a lot of us, that's not possible, and that's why it's great that the internet can give us access to something like the Fluent in 3 Months community. And of course, as part of the video course, I made sure to talk a lot about that aspect of it. So instead of me just starting the videos by saying, yeah, make this video, go on, do it. Well, what are you still waiting for? Go do it. I talk about the struggles and I talk about the difficult aspects, and I try to be as encouraging as possible, because I think this mental aspect is so important when it comes to difficult projects in general, and especially in language learning. So I really wanted it to be as central as possible to the Fluent in 3 Months challenge.
Great. And we actually had JD, who is also a return challenger, jump in the comments, and he said, until you do the challenge, it is easy to underestimate the value of the community. Just knowing everyone else is trying to keep me from giving up.
Yeah, and this is so important, and I appreciate that comment, JD, because it's difficult to truly express the value that you get from the likes of the Fluent in 3 Months challenge. Because if I describe it as a community, then you could be like, well, I can just go on a forum and I can say, hey, I'm learning a language, or I can just say I'm Facebook group or something. And it's different when you have a community that is very specifically tailored around this encouraging mindset. Because to be honest, I've been on other language learning communities online, and quite a lot of them are a little discouraging, and several of them are very discouraging, because they tend to be obsessed with grammar and they would overcorrect people, which you do need in certain situations. And I look for that. When I'm an intermediate level speaker of a language, I want everything to be corrected. But when I'm just starting off, and if I was to upload my very first video and my pronunciation obviously isn't going to be great, and all the feedback I get is, oh no, that's terrible, you should give up right now, then that's not going to do me any good. And as it is, I already have my internal self-doubts. So this is why we really, the community really is undervalued, and there's nothing I can say on a page that describes the Fluent in 3 Months challenge that truly emphasizes what benefit you get out of an actually supportive community with similar concepts and goals to you, that they want to get speaking in their target language within a few months, and they want to have these people to support them. And if you like a few things you've seen in my own videos, as I've done them over the years, that you get to experience that for yourself. So that's kind of a big aspect of the community. And JD is right, it's very hard for us to really explain this to people. So I appreciate that repeat comers are able to emphasize that even more.
George asks, how does the challenge help build momentum in the language? Too often I find that if progress is slow, I get bored and start working on a different language.
Yeah, so I understand, and I think that momentum, I'll tell you something. When I started my very, very first language project, which I'm always public about, was Spanish, for the 6 months that I didn't learn Spanish, one of the reasons was this lack of motivation and momentum. That I would have an idea, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do this, like I'm going to join this group class, and I would dive into it, and then it wouldn't go so well, and like it could potentially have worked, but it just didn't, because I didn't have the best first week or two, and then I would lose that momentum and give up. And the problem is, I didn't have any feedback, I didn't have any kind of real like grand plan with this that I was trying to follow. So I lost that momentum, and then I would do nothing for a month, and then I'd get a completely unrelated idea and start the whole process over again. And that's essentially what I did for 6 months, is I kept having an idea, trying it out, it didn't work super well, and then I'd lose momentum and give up for a few more weeks. So the difference in the challenge is that we center it around these momentous month-long milestones that we aim towards. And this is a huge difference that I definitely found myself when I started the Fluent in 3 Months blog. One of the reasons that it hugely motivated me to push forward in my language projects is because when I reached those moments when I was getting frustrated with some grammatical point or some aspect of the language that I wasn't enjoying so much, and I was tempted to just give up and do something else, then there's a little bit of that pressure to create that video by the end of the month. It's something you actually have to deliver. And this is one reason why, like, you know, I have a lot of criticism on traditional academic approaches. But one of the benefits of them is when they do have test periods, then just having that coming up in the distance, just knowing that you have an exam in a few weeks, is going to give you that extra motivation to study for it. I don't personally like exams, and that's why we replaced it with something a lot more fun of just making a video of you speaking in the language. But even that concept that you have something coming up, and I think for too many of us, like I know for a fact, January's coming up very soon, and what's going to happen is millions of people around the world are going to say, I want to learn Spanish. And they have no goals with that, they have no timeline with that, they have no concept of milestones that they're going to aim for, and that's why they might have that big boost for like the first week, but then they lose their momentum. So in the challenge, we get around that by having very specific goals in very specific timelines. And as you learn within the challenge, that helps a lot. Now, I can't promise that you won't get bored because aspects of learning the language can get tedious sometimes. But the great thing is you can share your understanding of that with other people. And I found that whenever I shared just openly, oh, I'm finding this so boring, then I might even have found somebody who would jump in and tell me why it's interesting. Maybe give me a different perspective of what I'm looking at. Because it's easy when you're in your own head to just keep seeing feedback loops that make something even more true. But when you share that with other people, they can give you counter evidence. And there are reasons why learning grammar might be more fun than you think it is. And it helps when you have other people to jump in and give you inspiration, or to say, if you want a break, then watch this YouTube video in your target language. It's very funny, and that'll kind of give you a completely different perspective. And it's why the community helps. It helps so much to be able to talk to people and share that you are you're at this kind of plateau because you're finding it more boring.
All right, another question is, if I get the Fluent in 3 Months challenge, do I need to get any other resources?
Okay, and I think we kind of touched on this previously, but if it would depend entirely on someone's goals, but generally yes, because we don't give people the actual specific content. We don't give them the list of words in their target language. Like if you're learning Spanish, for instance, I wouldn't give you all 5,000 words that you might need to learn over the next, whatever it might be, month or 2 months or even the full 3 months. It doesn't work quite like that. The thing is, there is no single resource you could ever get. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how great their advertising is. Things like Rosetta Stone are famous for doing this. They will present themselves as the one solution to solve all your language learning problems. And I am definitely not saying the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge is your one solution. That once you get this, then you'll never need anything else, and it's the only resource you'll ever need. I think that's not realistic. I think if I had tried to do that, I wouldn't have made anything good. I wouldn't have had a good community, I wouldn't have had a good course, because I would try to have little aspects of everything. And this is an issue with any course that tries to do everything, is you're not ever going to be good at any specific thing. So we focused on the community, we focused on teaching people about the process of language learning, we focused on like guiding people in things that we know have worked for others. But when it comes to the actual resources, you would have to use other ones. But as Shannon alluded to earlier, we expect that you are going to have a certain restricted budget for this, and we understand that it's an investment to get the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge. So our priority is always to recommend free resources. There are so many ways online that you can learn the content of your language, and you can do it for free. And of course, there's other communities that are free, but we have definitely found, like I said before, you may not get, essentially the most part, you're not going to get the same level of support and understanding and encouragement that you'll get from our community. So that's what sets it aside, but you still can use all those free resources, and we'll tell you where to get them, because that's part of our work at Fluent in 3 Months, is we're constantly looking for, like, we want to write blog posts about the best materials out there, so we're constantly looking for what is the latest, most useful stuff. So we won't tell you things that 5 years ago might have been the best resource, whereas now they haven't updated it or something. We will tell you what the most useful current resources are, and then we'll show you a few others that maybe have a small fee if they have to have that fee to give you their best possible content. But we really focus on the resources that you need. So to answer the question in short, yes, you definitely need more resources, but that's by design. We admit that we are not the be all end all of language learning, and I think if you find anything online that tells you it's the only thing you'll ever need, then you should be very, very skeptical.
All right. It looks like we don't have any new questions coming in. So, any final words for someone who might be on the fence about joining the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge?
Absolutely. I would say if you just look on YouTube for Add One Challenge, because Fluent in 3 Months Challenge is brand new. It's only existed for the last month or so. And because of that, it's kind of hard to see like what have people's experiences been with it in terms of the course aspect. But like I said, the community aspect has been built upon from the Add One Challenge. So if you just go on the search bar on YouTube and search for Add One Challenge, you will see thousands of videos that people have shared of their own like multiple stages in progressing in a language, and you'll see that difference, and you'll see that it sometimes it's just that little push that they needed to really get their momentum going. So I truly believe that it's everybody watching this, everybody in the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge, they have the potential to be amazing language learners. It's very hard to find that potential by just researching, Googling things and so on. You just need other people to help you initially to get that momentum. So we are kind of just a catalyst in helping people become the naturally good language learners they should be. And this is why I would recommend you check it out. But like I said, if you look at Add One Challenge, you'll see at least the community aspect and what that has done for so many people over the years.
All right, a couple of quick questions that came in. George asks, is there any extra guidance when learning a language that is usually harder or less common, such as Irish or Chinese, for example? So again, as a part of the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge, you get access to our coaches. So any questions that you may have, whether it's more or less, because your language is more challenging or not, we are here to help you. So we are more than happy to help provide whatever guidance you need as a part of the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge. I have studied Chinese, so I am familiar with a lot of the resources, with the language itself. I'm one of the coaches, and I've studied 12 languages. So I'll be able to help with that. And then because I have that experience as well, I'm able to help with the languages that I may not be familiar with because I've gone through the process so many times. And then Robert says, if I get this right, there are no language learning materials at all in this course. So again, just to really clarify, there are language learning materials because this is a language course, but it's more in terms of building the skills that you need to become an independent language learner. If you're looking for language specific resources, that's a bit of a tricky question because we do have our conversation builder courses, but they're only available for select languages like Spanish, German, Korean, French. I feel like I'm missing one, but so we do provide that, and it is language specific. So yes, but if you're outside of one of the languages that we currently have that course for, no. But again, you have your dream team, you'll get to practice with your dream team. So you'll be using the language as a part of the challenge. We do make recommendations for resources again, and free when possible. And if you have any questions about how to use those resources or what the best way to use a resource, a kind of resource is, or what resources you should be using. That's what the coaches are there for. So you can ask us those questions and we're more than happy to provide that guidance. So again, any questions that you have during the challenge, you have access to us the 90 days of the challenge. So don't be afraid to ask us your questions and get that guidance if that's what you need. So
Yeah.
um, that's it. Benny, do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, we didn't want to make a new language learning course. That's not like in terms of language learning materials. I've done that with my language hacking books, and you know these are a dime a dozen nowadays. You can find materials for every language. You can find them for free. You can get books for $5 or $10. You can get expensive courses that are software for hundreds of dollars. There's a big range of everything that you can get. But to have a support group, to have guidance in the process of learning a language, like I've gone through so many resources that just didn't help me because as a beginner language learner, my initial years, the process of learning a language was the hardest part. And that's what we help with. That's the course aspect is we are teaching you to become excellent independent language learners, and then you will be able to use whatever materials you want. So definitely want people to see that that's what we're going for here. We didn't want to compete with Rosetta Stone and the other big names in making course materials, but we did want to solve a problem that we see as one of the biggest problems in language learning. People need guidance in how to become language learners, and they need help in finding those resources, finding the resources that are best for them, because you can read Amazon reviews for books, but you know, like ultimately, does that fit your specific criteria about the problems you're trying to solve? And it's better if you can discuss that with fellow language learners. So this is kind of our philosophy on the whole thing. But yep, that's everything I think worth saying about the Fluent 3 Months Challenge. Like you could see in the conversation chat thread, there's the link to click, and we'll be signing up for this challenge tomorrow. And something to keep in mind that unlike a regular course that is just like a download, if it were that, then you would just get it whenever. But this is a community, and we all start learning at the same time. So because of that, it's only ever open for very short windows, and that's intentional. Because if it was open the whole time, then we would just have a few handfuls of people learning at one particular stage. But everyone is learning at the same stage that they are. So you have until tomorrow, and if you have any other questions, then Shannon shared her email in the chat there. Feel free to shoot them over to her. And regardless of whether you join or not, I wish everyone the best of luck in their personal language learning projects. And I hope you found this video interesting, and you'll see us plenty all over the place and encouraging you in your language learning projects.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge.
Happy language learning, everyone. And